Hello and welcome to the Dynata training series. This video will cover using the Dataset Labeling Workbook with any dataset. The Dataset Labeling Workbook is a versatile Excel file that you can use to edit, categorize, define, and relabel variables in bulk. The Excel Dataset Labeling Workbook is strongly recommended for users who plan on working with data in Excel or CSV formats. Although the workbook is not required for SPSS or other file types, it can still be used with any dataset that has been uploaded to MarketSight. Every dataset has its own dataset labeling workbook, and this workbook can be updated. You can either start with a blank version of the dataset labeling workbook, or you can work with a pre-populated version based on the content of your dataset. Using a pre-populated version is useful if you have already uploaded the dataset and need to make modifications to it. To start with an empty workbook, find the link on the home page under the User Resources section. If you would like to utilize a pre-filled copy, you have two options here. First, select a dataset in your account. Right-click on it and click Export. Then choose Labeling File. Second option is go to the Variables page, click on Export in the action bar and choose Labeling File. When the export has completed, you will see a download link with the pre-filled workbook in your task list. When you open the file, you will see three worksheets. The first worksheet contains a list of instructions that can be helpful, whether you are looking to upload the workbook alongside a new dataset or apply it to a previously uploaded file. The second worksheet contains some generic example of various variables type. You should leave these worksheets in your final workbook even if you aren't planning on making use of them. Removing these sheets can cause the workbook upload to fail. If you are beginning with a pre-filled workbook, the third worksheet should already contain the labeling for all variables in your dataset. Note that you can leave blank rows between variables to make it easier to read. Here, you will see several columns. Column A contains the variable code. This is a unique identifier for each variable and it must be an exact match to what's in your dataset file in order for the labeling workbook to apply properly. If you are working with an Excel or CSV dataset, the code will be equal to the column header for that variable. Note that each variable code is only entered once, despite each variable taking up more than one line. In our workbook example, we will be focusing on variables demo1 and demo2. Column B is the variable name. This is the label that will appear in your crosstabs, charts, and output. We generally recommend shorter label as they look best in charts, but you can enter the question text here if you desire. The original name for Demo 1 is What is Your Age? So let's take this opportunity to shorten it. Likewise, we will trim down Demo 2 from What is Your Gender to simply Gender. Column C is the value code and column D is the value name. Here, we must take into the account different types of variables. It's likely that some variables may not have information here. For example, respondent ID is a text variable, so there are no numeric values that can be labeled. Other variables that can be left blank here includes date or time variables. Checkbox or single select questions like our age and gender variable will typically feature value codes and value names. As a result, the value code in column C must be numeric and it must match the numeric values in your dataset. You cannot enter text in this field. If you're working with a text-based Excel dataset, you will need to convert your dataset to numeric values before the workbook will function as anticipated. If you enter a value code, you should add a value name. Again, shorter is better when it comes to making clean-looking crosstab and charts, but the final choice is up to you. We will leave the value name in our workbook for age and gender as is. Column E contains the variable category. Any variable in your dataset can be placed into a single category, making it easier to locate while building other user-defined variables or crosstabs. Categorization can also improve the load speed on the crosstab editor for spatially large datasets, as you can filter variables to a specific category rather than loading the entire list. Column F is the description question text. This is a separate field that you can put your question text into and later add it into the crosstab in addition to your variable name. Column G will set missing values. Missing values are values that represent some sort of invalid responses such as don't know or prefer not to answer. It's useful to track these sort of responses by coding them, but doing so can affect the means or average calculated for that variable. To avoid this, you can put the numeric code for the missing value here in column G. You can specify up to 3 individual values or a range. Missing values are removed from variable calculations like averages, which prevents your data from showing skewed results. Column H is the UDV type. This column is only filled out for the user-defined variables and it indicates which sort of variable is being created or labeled by the workbook. It can be any one of the following: MRV or a multiple response variable, CV or a conditional variable, RG or a regrouping variable, MV or a mathematical variable, FV or a filter variable, WV or a weight variable, GV or a grid variable. If you are creating user-defined variables through the workbook or already have user-defined variable made, you will see the UDV definition in column I. This is a form of simple syntax that specifies how the individual variable value should be set up. If this is your first time using the Dataset Labeling Workbook to create user-defined variables, we suggest creating at least one in MarketSight prior to exporting the workbook. You will then see the simple syntax used in the context of your dataset, which will help it make sense. Multiple response variables should refer to their original predecessor variables in this column. These are the individual answer choices which are typically split out into separate variables in many dataset formats. Note that we are using the original variables code in this column as the code is the unique identifier. Regrouping variable use or logic. In this example, age groups, I have 3 values. It has numeric value code of 2, a label of adults, and is defined as demo1 equals to 2, demo1 equals to 3, or demo1 equals to 4. If we do a quick search in my workbook, we will see that demo1 is my age variable. And the numeric values of 2, 3, and 4 represent respondents who are between 18 and 44. Read another way, this logic is age equals 18 to 24, or age equals 25 to 34, or age equals 35 to 44. Conditional variables can use OR logic as well as AND statements and parentheses to define more complex logic. In the gender and age segment variable, let's look at the first value here. This has a value code of 1, is labeled as male youth, and is defined as demo02 equals 1 and demo01 equals 1. As you recall, demo01 is my age variable and demo02 is my gender variable. Put another way, this logic is age must be equal to under 18 and gender must be equal to male. Conditionals can ultimately get much more nuanced and even involve parentheses to group logic, as you will see in other values here. Advanced user of MarketSight will find the Dataset Labeling Workbook to be a time-effective method of editing or refining conditional logic, especially when it comes to adding or removing parentheses in bulk across many similar variables. Filter variables are, in a sense, conditional variables with a single value. So the approach for these is the same. Mathematical variables are defined in a similar manner. We will see the annual Salford Mill mathematical UTV. This logic takes the usage variable, which was a numeric open end in which respondents could estimate their monthly bill, and multiplies it by a constant value of 12. Weight variables are defined by using the variable code, the equal sign, and the value code of that variable. There should be one line per value code in the original variable. Then the last 3 lines are used to define the maximum number of iterations, the acceptable tolerance, and the weight calculation type. If this is your first time working with weighting directly in MarketSight, you may find it easier to proceed through the user interface. More experienced users will find utility in managing and apply weighting targets through the Dataset Labeling Workbook. Continuing on with our columns, there are a few more in the worksheet that we should discuss. Column G is specific to multiple response variables and indicates how the MRV should count values from the underlying answer choices. You can enter a single value such as 1, or you can specify all. A single value is typically used when the underlying answer choices are represented by yes-no questions. You might use the all option when you want to include more than a single value, such as when you might have a respondent rank their 3 favorite schools. Finally, column K is used when creating or updating a weight variable in MarketSight. Each line that contains a value should contain a target proportion in this column. In other words, if you are using a variable with 2 values, you will need to devote 2 lines to this, 1 per value. The sum of your target proportion values must be equal to 1. For more information on user-defined variables, please check out our training videos on each type. When you are finished with your workbook, remember to save it. You can always repurpose it later for another dataset if the variables in that dataset are coded the same way. Back in MarketSight, a dataset labeling workbook can be applied 2 different ways. The first is to upload it alongside your dataset. To do so, go to the dataset screen, click on New Dataset. Under Data File to upload, select your dataset file. Under Dataset Labels or Metadata file, browse for your completed workbook. Once you have added a name for your dataset, click OK. The files will upload simultaneously. If there are any problems with the workbook, you will get a Messages tab under the Dataset Properties. In this example, a variable code that I had listed in the workbook was not found in my dataset. If this is the result of a simple typo, it's easy enough to fix and then re-upload. If no messages are shown, then the workbook was applied without issue. You can also apply the Dataset Labeling Workbook to an already uploaded dataset. Locate your dataset in the left-hand tree view, then right-click on it. Choose Properties. Under the area Replace the Dataset Labels file, browse for this workbook. Then click OK to apply it. MarketSight will apply the changes and let you know when the process is complete. Let's take a quick look at our variables page to see the changes we made to Demo 01 and Demo 02. Here, we can see that the name has been relabeled as expected. We hope you find this video helpful and thank you for watching.